force people to say, what will be true in 5 years, you get a very different answer. So here's an example. The cost of AI tokens, that is the delivery of queries, is going down by a factor of 10 every year.
Amazing.
So 5 years, 10, 10 to the fifth, or sorry, 5 to the, you can do the math. It's a very large number. What happens when the cost of my little sonnet is so cheap, it's just everywhere? Right. All in praise of you, Mayor.
Of course.
What does that mean? Think backward. Almost every business fails to understand the compounding of these technologies.
Innovation is often referred to as managed chaos. Yeah. How do you explain that sort of juxtaposition, that tension between managing and something that's somewhat organized or ordered in chaos?
It has to do with the structure of goals. You want to think a lot about goal alignment. In corporations, it's pretty easy because everybody has stock options, they have a common goal. It's much harder in what you do because there's multiple goals. So if I were you, if I were running the city, which fortunately you're doing and I'm not, I would sit down and say, what are the real goals?
Prioritize.
Right? Healthcare, safety, economic growth, welfare, and I'd measure them. Set the goals, measure them, articulate them, repeat, repeat, repeat.
So how do you protect true innovation from the bureaucracy that inevitably grows around that success and can stifle that same innovation?
In software, which is what I've done from 50 years, which is, I think, largely going away because AI is beginning to write software, my simple rule was that 3 people would invent something new, like the Chrome browser or the Android operating system or so forth, and then it would take 1,000 people to finish it. And I kept thinking, why do we need so many people? And there's this constant problem of every team, engineering team, management team, getting bigger and bigger. You want lean teams. The lesson over and over is lean teams. Another example. I have a rule with the companies I'm running now that if we do new things, you can only have 10 people, you can't have 11. When we go into a new country, you can have 10 people, but not 11. Because I figure 10 people is a group that's kind of a manageable group. It's self-managing. They know each other. They can figure it out and so forth. And you can judge the team. So what happens if you're not disciplined about that is you get people who I call glue people, and I mean this in the most affectionate way. They are very nice people. They glue person A to person B, and you discover you don't need them. Person A can talk to person B without the person in between. Yeah. And that glue person slows everything down. So time to decision, quickness, small teams, and agile thinking is important. My experience in talking about this around the world is everyone goes like this. And this means I'm a human, and I'm breathing, and I'm listening to you. It does not mean I'm going to do anything. So if you hear these ideas, unless you implement the things I'm talking about, you won't get the benefit. Knowledge is not sufficient. You actually have to take the leadership. And that's when it gets tough, because you're talking about very protected groups, protected individuals, and so forth. The great business people know when to push those and when not to. And that's a judgment.
So, of course, moving on to AI. AI is going to be the most powerful tool humanity's ever created. It's also potentially going to be the most dangerous. Let's watch this clip.
A new age has begun, one not written in ink, but in code.
This innovation, this arrival of this new alien incredible intelligence.
Artificial intelligence, the most powerful tool humanity has ever created, and perhaps its greatest test.
The most important thing that's going to happen in about 500 years, maybe 1,000 years in human society.
Few understand it better than Eric Schmidt, the man who helped shape the digital world as we know it. Today he stands at the frontier of innovation and responsibility, asking the question that will define our future. Can we control what we've created? The next revolution isn't coming, it's already here.
So wow, that's as good as my sonnet. Thank you. Good job.
So I'm going to go a little off script, more provocative, I told you. So is this sort of AI race really a race between hopefully the good guys out-programming the bad guys? Is that what this race is going to be, with more power, more compute, more sort of programming knowledge? Is that how this is going to go down?
Well, the race to build a non-human intelligence that we collaborate with is the defining event of our generation, of our lifetimes. It will color everything. The gains will be phenomenal. One of my friends is dying of ALS. Can you imagine the value of a solution to that? It's horrible to see, and he's a great human being. I can go on and on about the tragedies that humans experience that these technologies can address. Healthcare is one obvious one. The arrival of intelligence for every single human being, right? Having an assistant that's as smart or smarter than you, the Einstein in the pocket. Just imagine all of that. These things, it's very hard to predict what will happen with this amount of new intelligence. Remember, I said the most important are humans. Well, now we have humans plus the AI. There are plenty of downsides, right? And we can talk about them. But the most important thing is this stuff needs to be built in America, on our values, with our views. And I feel very, very strongly about this. I want American, I'll use the word liberalism in the classic sense. America's rule of law, its individual freedom, its distrust of the government, the combination of that individualism, the frontier belief is really, really important. And we're on a revolutionary frontier here. A simple example is, imagine if the internet had been invented in China. Just think about it. Just think about how different it would be and how different your experience would be on it.
By the way, after that sonnet, there's no offense taken whatsoever. Okay, so first question was a little bit provocative. I think my second question is the following. The acceleration of the intelligence is so profound that the question becomes, are these systems going to have their own consciousness? Mm-hmm. And if they have their own consciousness, are they going to be able to make decisions independent of the prompting? Which means, if they're smarter than us and they're independently prompted, can they figure out more intelligently than we can how to prevent us from turning them off?
Yes, you're now writing a movie script that I think we're going to see a lot of movies written about. So for a bit of background right now, these AI systems are prompted by humans. The technical term is called prompt engineering. And young people in college will go to prompt engineering class where they'll learn how to manipulate these models in really, really powerful ways. That's not general intelligence. That's special intelligence. So if I'm a physicist, which I'm not, I'll have my physics assistant and I'll say, I have the following idea, and the physics assistant will say, well, I've analyzed that, here's a better idea for you. But the invocation or the initiation occurs from the human. The question is, when do these systems, when are they able to initiate on their own? The technical term for that is called recursive self-improvement. They're just naturally learning and getting smarter. And there are all sorts of terrible scenarios. It discovers that the only thing the computer needs is electricity, so it decides to shut down a hospital to get more electricity for itself. Those are the kind of movie scenarios. To me, all of these are red lines. The point at which we humans give agency to these computers for what they do is a mistake. And I think collectively we need to define those red lines. Another example would be access to weapons. The last thing I want is an AI system making decisions about nuclear war, nor do any of us. That kind of thing.
I have a bunch of questions from that. Because the problem is with that is certainly, and we see this sort of play out geopolitically, the US, we presume, will be responsible. The question is, how do we deal with people who may have this that are not responsible? Yeah. Well, number one. And I'll give a little bit of hope to humanity. This is the second time I interview Eric, by the way. Mm-hmm. And we talked about this the first time, just to give humanity a little bit of hope. Obviously, nuclear weapons have been around for a generation, but for the first time that they were employed, thankfully, we've limited this technology to something that has not so far destroyed us. So I guess my question is, we can potentially have faith in our country, hopefully, to do the right thing and draw those red lines. How do we deal with the nefarious actors who may not be so ethical?
we're going to have this problem. Every technology, I mean, when Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, it didn't occur to him that criminals would use it. I remember one day people said, "Did you know that there are criminals on the internet?" And I said, "Who let them in?" Right? We didn't design the internet for criminals, and they showed up, right? So you have to assume the same thing is going to happen with this technology. And I think the most important thing is to put in the observational systems to watch for it. And we should be able to create surveillance systems within the internet to watch for bad actors, at least in the extreme cases. I'm worried about it for the following reason. In our lifetimes, in the next 5 or 10 years, every single human on the planet who has a mobile phone, cell phone, will have access to Einstein, Leonardo da Vinci, whomever, in some form. We've never had that devolution of power. We've never had that decentralized empowerment of humans. Now, this group, I trust. There's an awful lot of wacky countries and wacky cultures and wacky religions, where I'm not sure I would trust their collective action being consistent with our values.
For sure.
Right. And I think history will judge us based on how we how we handle the humans as this intelligence evolution occurs and empowers individuals.
So the most famous use case, obviously, of AI right now is the large language models. I mean, they're the ones that are being used day in and day out. What would you say are probably going to be, let's say, the top 1 or 2 or 3 next use cases that you think are going to change things? And maybe 1 or 2 that people aren't thinking about?
Well, so today there are sort of 3 things going on. I'll simplify it. Language stuff, that's what we were joking about with large language models. There's something called the agentic revolution, where you have agents. An agent takes language in, it has memory, and it produces something. So it says, I want to do a conference in Miami. And it selects the venue, and then it calls the mayor, and the mayor says yes, because the mayor is very pro-business. And then it calls the security people, and then it calls the contractors, and then it designs the stadium. Each of these is a work plan, right? Over and over again, that's workflow. Workflow is what happens in business. The technical industry believes 2 things. First, the scaling laws, which are the laws of improvement, are not slowing down. The crazy investment that you see is there for a reason. They're seeing the kind of gains, this factor of 10 every year, are continuing to come. It's pretty amazing. And most importantly, with that investment comes everything else that we talked about. It's enormously expensive. And by the way, we're going to run out of electricity before we run out of money, which is a separate discussion. But the important thing is you have language. The next thing, and then you have agents. And these agents do everything. There's something called agent orchestration, where you can move the agents around. And the third one is essentially reasoning. You now have systems that can pass math tests, chemistry tests, biology tests, and so forth at the graduate level and beat the humans. That's really remarkable. And I've watched them, and I have no idea what problems they're solving. And you can watch them go forward, it doesn't work, they problem solve like a human being. The union of those is the power. That will give us the power to innovate, to address our problems. And the thought experiment that I would give you is, let's imagine that one of the American companies, I obviously have my own bias, but we'll pick somebody else, whoever, manages to get to the point where these systems can solve problems that humans have never been able to solve. What is the value of that company? How many trillions of dollars in one company?
Infinity.
Right, it's literally, I mean, think about all the problems you face every day, and it can solve every one of them. And you can sit there and drink coffee and, sort of
My wife just solves most of them, but that's okay.
That's right. The important thing is that we're on the threshold of being able to have truly new innovation. And that's the hype, that's the promise. If we don't get there, people will be destroyed just from their own hype. I mean, it's extraordinary.
I'm going to ask one last question. It's a follow-up to the problem that you presented. Is SMRs, which are small-scale modular reactors, is that the solution for that energy gap that you're talking about, or is it going to be something else?
We need more energy in America. We need every kind of energy. We need nuclear. We need fusion. We need natural gas. We need renewables. We need wind. We need solar. We need it all. Why? Because those data centers, which account for 1% of GDP growth this year in America, need power. If you want that 3% growth that the president and others have talked about, you need to solve the energy problem.
Eric, thank you so much. What a provocative conversation.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Can I read one thing?
Go, of course.
I was thinking a lot about, you gave me the honor to talk to this incredible group, about the frontier. In 1893, a fellow named Frederick Turner talked about the frontier. And he said, "To the frontier, the American intellect owes its striking characteristics." This is 150 years ago. "That coarseness and strength combined with acuteness and inquisitiveness, that practical, inventive turn of mind, quick to find expedients, that masterful grasp of material things, lacking in the artistic but powerful to effect great ends, that restless, nervous energy, that dominant individualism, working for good and evil, and with all that buoyancy and exuberance which comes with freedom. These are the traits of the frontier. This is America. This is us. This is why we're here. This is why you're a great leader. Thank you very much."
That was in 1893.
1893.
You know what happened 3 years later?
What's that?
You know what happened 3 years later?
What?
The city of Miami was established. 1896.
1896.
There you go.
Happy birthday to Miami.
There we
Thank
go.
you. Okay, Mayor.
Take
Okay,
care,
good.
my friend.
Thank you, guys.
At the Adam Smith Center for Economic Freedom, you don't just learn, you achieve. Through our interdisciplinary Bachelor of Science in Business and Government Leadership, you'll gain perspective, innovate, and connect with real-world leaders.
It starts with me.
It starts with me.
It starts with me.
It starts with you.
Leadership starts here.
PIF is one of the world's largest and fastest growing sovereign wealth funds. The United States is PIF's most important market outside of Saudi Arabia. Since 2017, PIF has directed $170 billion into the U.S. economy, fueling growth, creating opportunities, jobs, and contributing $33 billion to U.S. GDP. Together with our U.S. partners, U.S. businesses, and top global asset managers, we're advancing innovation across mobility, aviation, renewables, sport, technology, finance, and more. Strengthening markets and creating long-term value across both nations. PIF's deep U.S. commitment spans across sectors, from $23.8 billion U.S. equities and our New York office to Live Golf, CONCACAF, FIFA Club World Cup, Surge Stake in PFL, and Sanibils as one of Silicon Valley's largest backers in next-generation technology companies. From shared investments to shared ambition. Anchored by major stakes in Lucid Motors, Savvy's $8.5 billion acquisitions of Scopely and Niantic, and Google Cloud AI centers. Our partnership is building opportunities that reach far beyond today. Looking to 2030, PIF's U.S. partnership grows even stronger, creating over 500,000 American jobs and building long-term prosperity across both nations. From vision to value, PIF is invested in better.
America Business Forum proudly presents Jamie Dimon, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of JPMorganChase.
Grew up talking finance at the kitchen table as a kid.
What are you doing now? What are you doing to serve your people? Why can you do better? What is somebody else doing?
In a world shaken by crisis, one man stood firm. As CEO of JPMorganChase, Jamie Dimon built the world's most powerful bank, not by following the crowd, but by leading through the storm. While others fell in 2008, his discipline and foresight turned risk into resilience. A visionary of modern finance, a symbol of leadership when it mattered most. The leader built to last. America Business Forum presents Jamie Dimon. For the following interview, George Gonzalez, Vice Chairman and CEO of City National Bank of Florida, takes the stage of America Business Forum.
Thank God.
All right. So, Jamie, before we get started, I just want to take a second and thank everybody for being here this morning. I wasn't here yesterday, but I saw a bunch of video clips, and yesterday's program was outstanding. The lineup of speakers, including President Trump, really reflects the stature of this event, but more importantly, it reflects the stature of the city of Miami and the influence that we are generating both nationally and globally. Jamie, I'm sure you've been to a lot of conferences, I've been to a lot of conferences, and I've never seen the lineup of speakers that we've had yesterday and what we're going to have today. And a quick story. Mayor Francis called me up about 2 months ago and said, George, I am thinking about doing this event. Here are my speakers, and we're going to make this happen. I said, Francis, you're crazy. You got 2 months to pull this together. Look at the speakers. You have the president, you have Jamie Dimon, you have a whole list of very influential people. You're never going to make this happen. But if you want to do it, let's try. And here we are. So, Francis, you're a little nuts, but congratulations on a heck of an accomplishment. So with that, I want to take a second and one more time welcome one of the most respected voices in global finance, one of the most influential bankers of our generation, Jamie Dimon.
George, thank you. So thrilled to be here. Thank you.
So, Jamie, my guess is a lot of people have heard a lot about your professional accomplishments, your career, and your impact to banking. But let's start with something a little bit more personal. And let's talk about how did your childhood and how did your family influence who you are as a person and who you are as a leader?
Right. So first of all, thrilled to be here. A little embarrassing, this whole entry, but it's quite a production. You know, I grew up, my grandparents were all Greek immigrants who came from Greece, never finished high school, moved to Jackson Heights, Queens, not far from where President Trump grew up, with a slightly smaller apartment than he had, a rental. But there were values that your parents taught. You didn't even know was happening at the time, which is, I'd say very fundamentally, it came from my grandparents, my parents, have a purpose in life. That purpose could be banking or art or science or being a political leader. It could be a caregiver. Treat everyone with respect. Everyone, like everyone equally and everyone fairly and everyone properly. Do the best you can. You know, whatever you're going to do the best you absolutely can. and hopefully make the world a better place while you're doing whatever you do. And those are kind of those values that's embedded in me, and I still believe them, and they're important for my family, and I think they're important for a lot of folks I talk about. When you talk about what actually drives them, it's things like that.
So you mentioned a very important word there, purpose. At what point in your life did you feel like you knew what your purpose was and your passion were going to be or needed to be or you wanted to be?
I didn't really. I guess I was in college, and I was always interested in business. I always read a lot. I always was interested in going out. My dad became a stockbroker, so I knew about financial services. But at one point, what I really wanted to do was help build a great company. Be part of the team building a great company. I didn't know what I would be doing, but I knew that being part of a team. And anyone, I listened to Eric Schmidt. When you're on a team, and it's no different than team sports. You want the team to win, and that was kind of a driving thing. To me, financial services was fascinating because when you wake up in the morning and read a newspaper, almost everything in that paper is going to affect you, all around the world, stocks, markets, politics. So it's I always found it a very fascinating field.
I'm going to skip around a little bit, but you just mentioned something that I struggle with every day, and I'm sure a lot of people here do as well. In today's environment where there's so much information coming at you, so much media, so many moving, fluid perspectives, where do you find the most accurate information that allows you to make decisions and to really set strategy for your organization?
Yeah, well, there are really two ways. I get up really early. I read 5 papers. I read everything people send me. I'm just constantly reading all the time, surveying the landscape of competitors, countries, and stuff like that. The second way is really just get on the road and get out with your management team, get in a bus and go to a branch and talk to a lot of people, because a lot of very smart people out there, and the best ideas don't even come from America. They come from places you don't expect it, and you run into technologies and you learn things. I remember years ago I sent the consumer banking team 15 years ago to China, and they were like, "Why are we going to China? We're an American U.S. consumer bank." And I said, "You'll find out when you get there." And I had them meet with Ping An and Tencent and WeChat and Alibaba, and it opens up your eyes. So just get out. I can go to a branch. You and I can go to a branch together today and sit down and talk to the tellers, and we will learn something. Something stupid that we do, or something that doesn't work, or something that they did better in another bank where they worked before, or something like that. So just constantly talking to people, constantly surveying the landscape. I heard Eric use the word curiosity, constant curiosity. Once your mind closes, you're not going to be able to make a lot of progress on a lot of things.
Not only do you learn something, but you probably get the real story of what's really happening, that by the time things get to you from a leadership standpoint, it's been filtered so many times, but when you're hearing it firsthand, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I don't allow people to filter stuff. I still read customer complaints, and I always tell people, if they ask you a question, you got to respond to me directly and not go up that chain of command, because that chain of command, starts to edit it and fine-tune it, and you got, if you're in a position like mine, you just got to break down those barriers all the time. The bureaucracy does want to control you. So you got to kill the bureaucracy. That's part of my job,
So let's go back to your personal life. Yeah. I think we all understand and believe that challenges are also silver linings in life. So as you think about your career, your personal life, what's been some of your hardest lessons, and what did you learn from them?
In the personal life, we've all been through, some forms of personal hardships. But the lessons from those hardships, if you're talking about the mistakes you made, like the things you did personally, that's a great quote. You don't learn a lot from the second kick of the mule. Again, I heard the mayor and Eric talking about it. We've all made a tremendous amount of mistakes. And I always say there's a pattern to them sometimes. Like when you act in anger, well, that is almost always a mistake. When I was a young executive, someone gave me a business card that said, all I had to do was fill out the date. My name is Jamie Dimon, and I'd like to apologize for my behavior on the night of X, because I would lose my temper over something. So, so you're constantly learning about that too. And it's better to learn from other people's mistakes than making them yourself. And you could do that too.
So Jamie, the institution that I'm privileged to lead is $30 billion, 1 or 2 states, 1,300 employees. You're leading a $4.5 trillion institution, 60 countries, 48 states, 300,000 employees. All right, we're almost the same. It's pretty much equal playing grounds between Jamie and I. Another 120 years or so, I'll be on that side of the room. But when you think about the importance of culture, we believe culture is the backbone of strategy. But when you think about the importance of culture, how do you implement culture when you have an organization that's all about managing risk and it's of that size?
Yeah. Well, first, I've been there for quite a while, so it's a little bit different. But you better be relentless. I mean, and again, I'm going to go back to the team example. If you have a team of people, everyone does their homework, everyone does their sprints, everyone learns the plays. And if you're the coach or the boss or whatever, you better be relentless. And we're pretty relentless on that. And it's not because you say we treat employees properly. They see you do it. They see you have bad people, you ask them to leave. I remember the first time I have fired clients because they mistreat our employees. That goes through the whole organization, that these people mean what they say what they mean. Getting on the road, a lot of people say, we're going to take care of the customer, but you go to a lot of corporations, they all stay at the corporate headquarters and talk to each other. They're not going on a sales call. They're not going to sweat the issue with why the client may not be happy with you or something like that. So you just got to have to do it day in, day out, 7 days a week, kind of relentlessly. That when you go through business reviews, you're going through the detail. How long does it take to do this? How long does it take to do that? And then people get it over time, and it kind of filters through the company. And then you got to communicate. I undervalued communication earlier in my life, but if you can communicate it properly and clearly, it really matters. And it can't be corporate pablum. It's got to be words people actually understand. So, with stuff that comes out of my office is written by me. There's no corporate bullshit in it. I can't stand it. I won't allow it. But of course, people write it for me, and they think I'm going to send it out, and I will not. And people know when you're speaking to them. And
so, as I'm scrolling through Instagram, I consistently run across Jamie Dimon quotes. You're legendary. So one of the quotes that I thought about was, the worst thing a company can have is a bunch of yes men. How do you ensure that people are telling you the truth? How do you filter out the BS from the truth? And particularly when you're Jamie Dimon, because people want to please you. How do you filter this out?
Yeah, so if people try to please me, it pisses me off. That is not the goal of an organization. Even when people say they want to be loyal to me, that gets me a little upset too, because they say, don't be loyal to me. Be loyal to the principles for which we stand. Be loyal to the company, the clients. That's not a personal type of thing. I was at a thing like this years ago, and a woman was giving a great speech, and she said, you have to have one truth teller at the table. And she was walking out, and I came up next, and I said, can I just stop you for 1 second? If you've got 10 people around the table, and there's only one truth teller, you have a problem. And you weed them out. That when people are honest and forthright, they raise the hand, and they say, that is not accurate, and you better have that, because if you don't have that, you will be going off base very quickly. And so you have a kind of a BS meter about how people are. And also, like you said, when you travel people, one of the favorite things I do, I call it the breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm at the bar with you guys. And when I'm at the bar hanging out with a bunch of people in the company around the world, they'll tell you. When they trust you, they'll tell you, yeah, Jamie, you really got to look at this. You don't understand what's happening. And then they also know you'll respond. It doesn't make them right, but they know that I heard it, and now it's my job maybe to do something about it. And over time, they see you do the right thing, and they know that you mean what you say. And then everyone who works for you does the same thing. So you don't have to necessarily come to me, because there are a lot of people who say, this is the right way to do something, and we simply do it.
So basically, what you're saying is leading by example is a key element of making sure that the people that you're trying to instill certain beliefs in, they're watching you basically emulate those behaviors.
Yeah, and you can't have friends of Jamie.
Right.
That your door's open to everybody. I don't know if Eric said this morning, but when you're in a room with a bunch of people, you got to reach out to the person who's not speaking up. You got to reach out. There are shy people in the room. They may be man or a woman or black or white or LGBT, but it's our job to reach out to them and to have enough empathy to see that they want to say something, but they're a little embarrassed or it's harder for them to do it. And and so very often I'll talk to someone after a meeting and ask them that. And then you got to get rid of the bad. There are these really, really bad traits that get built up, and I'm sure you've all seen these. It's the meeting after the meeting. Well, I didn't want to say it in front of everybody, but. And they're trying to get you to change the decision the group had made. It's the rope-a-dope, where the information wasn't shared beforehand. It's all these little tricks that the politicians and the BSers do to try to capture it. I don't have meetings after meeting. I tell people, if you can't say it in front of your partners, don't say it at all. You get paid a lot of money to do the right thing. And so, and again, I'll go back to a team example. In corporations, you do a lot of BS, but you can't do it on a football field. That person, they learn their play, they didn't learn their play, the coach will take them out. But in our field, it's very easy to, let people, they're nice people, they're a friend of mine. So the discipline on the sports team, that's what you want inside a company too.
So Jamie, you've highlighted the value of learning from your competitors and also the value of learning from other institutions outside of your industry. And when you think about what are some of the insights that you've been able to draw from companies or leaders outside of the financial services industry?
Yeah. So when I say I travel and see people, I always go see other companies. I've been to Google and Dell Computer and WeChat and Alibaba. I mean, it's amazing to learn. So you have to do it outside your own industry. I always love to ask people, how do you run your joint? What do you do? How do you meet? When do you meet? Who has the follow-up list? How do you run your office? How do you deal with customer complaints? And so you're always learning from that too. And there are always new tricks. And they're always, if you look at, people write analyst reports or people write for newspapers and magazines, there's always someone who just did something different or better. And I even remember when I was a younger executive, there was another guy there called Bob Lipp, who's a very good friend of mine. I was watching him run a meeting. He was fabulous in running the meeting. He made it fun, but there was no BS about it. And he used to always use a quote, celebrate your successes, but in the management meeting, emphasize the negatives. And, and he would always take you on the road and always take you to branches. And he showed you how to make it well, you didn't go to a branch just to show the flag. You went to a branch to, he'd sit down with we'd have lunch with the tellers in the back or something like that and learn from them. And you learn from other people all the time. I still learn tricks of the trade, always.
Jamie, we have a quick video, but before we kick off the video, you've been an unbelievably influential role model in the world of finance, business, even public policy, and geopolitics. And during the financial crisis, you were known to be the face of stability. So when everybody else was running for cover, you were a cool, calm, and collective. So let's show a quick video, and then we're going to get back to a question for you.
In 2008, the world's financial system was on the brink. Markets collapsed, giants fell, fear spread faster than reason.
Basically, everyone's job is gone. Well, that's not what we've been told in finance.
But in the eye of the storm, one leader stood steady. Jamie Dimon, CEO of JPMorganChase, guided his team with discipline, foresight, and conviction.
Doing a better job educating Americans about the power of our liberty, our freedoms.
While others chased risk, he built resilience through decisions that would define a generation. JP Morgan emerged not broken, but stronger. A fortress of stability in a world of uncertainty. A masterclass in leadership under pressure. A story of foresight, courage, and the power of principle.
So, there's crisis and then there's crisis. When everything around you seems to be unstable and on fire, and the system seems to be on fragile ground, what's the requirement of leadership, and what does that really feel like in that moment?
Yeah. It's like, first of all, you're kind of prepared beforehand, so you have people and risks, and I tell people what really changed wasn't much we did, is that our risk committee used to meet once a week. It was meeting 5 times a day, including midnight or 5 a.m. in the morning to capture what was going on in Asia. And you got rid of all formality. You have a problem, you bring it up. You need you need people who are experts in this client, this credit, this legal system in Iceland or something like that. They're in the room, and you just move. It actually is kind of calming because you just roll up your sleeves, you start working 15 or 20 hours a day. You do it 7 days a week until the crisis is over. And as opposed to, it's almost like more relaxing to actually attack the problem than to worry about the problem. And so even today, when I have a real deep problem, I'd rather go to work, get the people there. And also, we have a lot of great people. So, we were just working it, just nonstop all the time. You are kind of breathless. I mean, you have people all around you. Some of these companies, people lost their money, their life, their careers, and it's terrible. But you want to help. So even some of these things, we set up outsourcing groups to get jobs for people who had lost their jobs, et cetera. And you just try to do the best you can. And you learn, by the way, that some people in a crisis, they are fabulous, and some people in a crisis, they are like children. I mean, literally like scaredy little children who can't believe that they have to have any kind of pressure like this. Like somehow life should have given them the gift of no problems ever. And so you learn a lot about people in a crisis.
It's interesting. When I hear you talking about crisis and you just got to work the problem, one of the things that we talk about at our organization is when there's crisis, it creates focus. And in all honesty, it allows you, if you can navigate that, when you get through the crisis, you've outperformed your peers. There's an opportunity to create some distance between you and everybody else because you were better prepared to navigate that situation and you executed. During good times, everybody's doing good.
Yeah.
During crisis, not everybody executes at that performance.
Yeah. And we've had pretty good times for quite a while now, yes.
So let's tackle something that you speak a lot about, which is you are a full-throated patriot and capitalist.
Yeah.
That's something that you've said repeatedly. And how do those beliefs, how do they guide your decision-making, particularly in a world that appears or is definitely so divided as we are today?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the most important thing to me is family and all that. Right next to that is my country. And it's not because it's just my country. Remember, this country was not a tribe. It was not a nationality. It was an idea. And anyone can become an American. And the power of freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of enterprise, independence. You can do what you want. You can live what you want. You can say what you want. You can believe what you want. You get to vote for our people in government. It creates this huge innovation. I don't think all the American public fully understands the power of that freedom. And you got to, those of us who travel around the world, you'd be surprised how there are far less freedoms overseas, and it's stifling, and the heavy hand of government, which could be pretty powerful out of countries. So, I deeply believe that it is this democracy, this country, are the shining city on the hill. It's the arsenal of democracy. It's the arsenal of freedom. It's going to be that way. It's going to be that way for the next 100 years. And all you got to do is read history. The world relies on us. I tell people, even non-aligned nations rely on America for the safety and security we provide for the world. And you got to be very careful when you look at what that means for people. So I think we should celebrate it. We should teach civics more. We should teach history more. We could acknowledge our flaws, but we should not denigrate the greatness of this country.
So, Jamie, how do we bridge these political divides in our country, or even around the world? Yeah. How's that going to happen? And what's the future that you see for the United States of America?
Yeah, I'm not. You read history again. We've had divides before. We had the Great Depression. We had Civil War, for God's sake. We had Revolutionary War. We've had some terrible times. When I was growing up, students were killed on American campuses. Martin Luther King was killed. Robert F. Kennedy was killed. Take a deep breath about history, okay? And that's what we are. We have a democracy. Sometimes it looks tough, and sometimes it looks tough. I say participate, we get involved, as you mentioned, in policy, getting things right. Getting policy right is kind of free for the American public. We need to do more of that. Just get involved. I am concerned, away from America, about the free and democratic world. So think of the wars in Ukraine, the terrorism in the Middle East. Those things are challenging the world as we know it. Now, I think we'll be okay. I don't think of divine rights as success. So I think we have to work those things to get them right. So I'm much more concerned about that than our democracy, per se.
So JP Morgan just recently announced a $1.5 trillion initiative to help fuel America's security and resiliency. And you're going to be investing significantly in advanced manufacturing and defense and energy, AI, and quantum. What's the form of those investments, and what do you think that's going to help achieve over the next 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, so I often ask myself the question, what you should do. So if you read, I write my chairman's letter every year, and last year I talk about all these policies we got wrong in America, and that we need to fix them, and you know them, housing and education and crime and immigration and all these things we could do better, and it's holding us back. And but this year I started asking the question, well, what can we do about it? What can JPMorganChase do about it? Now, we do a lot around the American dream, affordable housing and mortgages and education and healthcare and skills, but the SRI, the Strategic Resiliency Initiative, is to help finance, either kind of with equity money or big loans, companies who are building things that make America and our allies resilient. So think of aerospace, defense, AI, super chips, some of these data centers you read about. Think of medical ingredients. That what can we do to secure the future and health of the United States of America and our allies around the world? And so we're going to add, over the next 10 years, another $500 billion of financing. That could be for big companies. There's also going to be, we're going to also do $10 billion of more like equity financing to help. Think of a middle market company that makes an optical equipment that goes in F-35 fighter, but they want to build a second plant in anticipation of a government contract. We may buy a piece of the company, give them the money to build the plant. So we're just forming around it. We're putting real power about this. We want to do our part. And if you look back, I hate crying over spilled milk. We all should have started doing this 15 years ago. The Chinese have been doing this for 15 years. And so we're a little late. You read about rare earths, but we can catch up. We have the time, but we got to do it quickly. And we're also going to write about policy. We have a lot of policy to stop us from doing this. How we do budgeting for the military, a whole bunch of other things. So we're going to do a lot of work, to make sure we're doing the right things to keep us all free and safe.
This administration, Trump's administration, seems to be very focused on trying to lower the amount of regulation and bureaucracy so that private sector, the economy can prosper. How do you see that playing out, and how do you see that impacting the financial services industry?
I love the fact about being pro-business. This notion that somehow, being anti-business is going to help the average American citizen or even the lower paid. So I agree with the concept. I don't think we've done a particularly good job taking care of the bottom 20% of our citizens. Their incomes didn't go up. Their health care is worse. They live in more crime in the neighborhoods. Their schools don't work really well. And we did that. That's Democrat and Republican policies, by the way. So I agree with that concept. I don't agree with the concept of beating up business as a way to fix it. Business creates jobs. Business pays people. Business does... So I do think business can get involved, and I may write an op-ed soon about good public policy is free. Okay, if we do a better job for schools, it's free. If we do some of this our regulatory system has got, and I'm not talking about banks, by the way, any one of you get involved in regulation, you could be a restaurant, you could be a small business, it is terrible, federal, state, permitting, local. The affordable housing problem, it's all regulatory stuff. You can't build a multifamily thing. You can't put this here. It doesn't have enough parking. It's got to have all these things. It's all regulatory. And so we can fix this stuff, and it's free. The government doesn't have to borrow more money to fix it. We already spend the money. We just need to fix the system a little bit. And so I think we should all get involved in trying to fix these policies that would make our country work far better. And deregulation is part of it. If you don't believe me, go to Europe, folks, okay? And Europe used to have a GDP per person of 90% of America. It's now 65% of America. It's on its way to 50% of America, which will jeopardize the health of Europe itself over time. And it's all anti-business, anti-investment, anti-innovation, and they kind of know it. And if they don't fix it, and we should help them fix it, because if Europe does badly, I think it's really bad for the Western world too. So, so I am very pro this. I'm not, and we should do it wisely.
Jamie, let's tackle AI for a second. I was in New York last week, and I met with your team. I met with Google, Microsoft, Accenture, Boston Consulting, you name it. And the amount of money that is being invested in artificial intelligence and the pace of that investment is unbelievable. How is that going to reshape the economy? How is it going to reshape the way we do business these days?
Look, it's going to affect, the way I look at it is every application, every job, every customer interface, everything we all do, and you're all going to have your own personal assistants. You're going to have agents that do research for you every time you wake up in the morning. And I agree with Eric. It's going to be unbelievable. It's going to cure a lot of diseases that we've all been afflicted with. You know, my guess is the developed world will be working 3.5 days a week in 20, 30, 40 years and have wonderful lives. And there are some dangerous parts, which I'll let Eric describe a little bit here. But I would say embrace it. You know, technology has downsides. It's used by bad people, but embrace it. We had 40 million people working on farms. Tractors and fertilizers is now like 1.5 million. We live better lives. We have better food. Those people went to do other things, and so it'll be okay. We've been using it now for 13 years. We spend a lot of money on it. We know exactly what it does in certain things. It's literally at the beginning. There's whatever you think, there are waves of this coming down the road. And the only thing I'd add to that is if it happens too fast for society to adjust, and I will give you a thought exercise. I think there are 2 million commercial truckers in the United States, and if somehow you can push a button, convert it to AI, it's cheaper, faster, safer, less CO2. You kind of want to do it, but you shouldn't do it if you're going to put 2 million people out of jobs. And the way to handle that is retraining, income assistance, slow it down, early retirement, relocation programs, and it's all doable. And that would have to take both government and business doing that together. And so we should be preparing for that today because AI is happening rather quickly. We do it ourselves. We are constantly changing jobs, and we've reduced jobs in certain categories for AI. Almost all the people get redeployed. They go do other jobs. They're very smart, capable people. And I agree with Eric too. Human capital. You can't replace human capital. You can't replace thinking. All these things that people think are going to happen won't happen exactly the way you expect. So,
one of the things we like to say, and this will eventually change, that AI is not going to replace people. AI is going to replace people that don't use AI.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important element of what you're talking about here. So there's a lot of moving pieces right now. You got trade, you got tariffs, you got Fed policy, you have AI. What is the single most important piece of advice you would give an entrepreneur, CEO, of how to navigate this environment?
Yeah, okay, ready? Here's my single piece of advice. There is no one thing. Okay, when you mentioned tariffs and trade and politics and geopolitics and potential inflation and Fed policy. You're gonna have to navigate all that. I think the best way to navigate that is actually, think it through. Kind of make the list of tailwinds and headwinds. They're not all going to happen at the same time. They're going to affect each other. If you look at all these problems we have, sometimes it isn't. People say tariffs. Well, that's just one thing. There are all these other things that take place, and they're like a lot of straws in the camel's back. And then look at the world a little bit. Like, what are the potential things of outcomes? Can you handle those outcomes? And then you'll be okay. Because what you really want to do is survive.
Right.
And serve clients when times are tough. And so, but there are a lot of things taking place today, and there's a lot of turbulence out there. And to me, that creates a little more uncertainty that you should be prepared for. And hopefully, continue to have the soft landing. But it may not happen. We just don't know.
I was just reflecting on what you just said about AI, and this. 2 years ago, my preparation for this interview would have taken 3 or 4 days, back and forth with the communication department. It took probably 10 minutes to come up with a list of questions and quotes, and it's just how quickly life is.
I was going to tell you did a great job, but now I know it was Gemini.
Well, I helped Gemini. I polished Gemini a little bit, but it was certainly. So let's tackle something that's been a little bit interesting for a couple of years. So you've been famously skeptical about Bitcoin. But I think you've come off of that a little bit over the last 6 months or 12 months. And I know JPMorgan uses a lot of blockchain, token, and a lot of innovation into your business and your approach. How do you balance the risk of investing in technologies that are going to drive innovation and future growth? And what are your thoughts on stablecoin and Bitcoin? That's a loaded question.
This is a great way to deal with an issue or something like that. Whenever we meet as a business unit, so it could be a small business unit like consumer branches or a big one like global investment banking, on the table and on the agenda is what are you doing in tech, AI, et cetera. That is always on the agenda. And I do it differently than other people. I don't say what's in your budget. I always say, are you doing everything you need to do to win in the future, period? And I don't care what the budget says. I don't care what it is. And you may walk in and say, you know what, I was just over somewhere, I really need to do X. My view is, you better be doing X. So to me, the budget is a roadmap. It is not your boss. And so I make people, we're going to do that. Stablecoin was one where I don't know how it's going to play out. But that also answers my question is, what do we do about it? We're involved. We're building a stablecoin. We may build it with other banks. We have a JPMorgan deposit coin already, which I can pay you interest on. We use the blockchain. Any of these tools that you want to use for smart contracts and stuff like that, we are simply going to do. I don't know how it's going to sort out. But I'd rather be plain, which keeps us smart, than acting like I know the answer to it. And so, and we do that with all technology. Whether, sometimes regardless of what I think about it, I want you to be dabbling in it. Because you're being smart, and it is much more important than saying Jamie does or doesn't like it and something like that. So, and we do that with almost all frontier type of technologies.
I'm going to shift on you a little bit. So there's been a historic relocation of both people and capital to Florida and to South Florida, primarily from the west coast of the country, the Northeast, Illinois, DC, you name it. And what are your thoughts on that? Is that going to continue? And for the residents of Wall Street South, how should we think about the future relative to that relocation that's taking place?
Yeah, my bottom line is I think that everyone has to compete. And when I grew up in New York City, I was probably one of those New York City kids that thought that it's New York City, New Jersey, and the rest of the world, something like that. And you know why New Yorkers are so depressed?
Why?
Because the light at the end of the tunnel is New Jersey. But now, and when I first started traveling the world, a lot of cities weren't great places, including like London, or Singapore, or Hong Kong, or Nashville, or now they're great. I mean, all these cities, they've got opera and food and infrastructure and terrific universities, and it's a competitive world. It's competitive between countries, it's competitive between cities, it's competitive between states. And you're mentioning a bunch of these states that are driving business out, and it will backfire. And so people vote with their feet, and some people act like they vote with their feet because they're selfish. They vote with their feet because they see a better life for them and their family. I'm not mad at someone if they leave JPMorgan because they say they got a better opportunity. I'm like, I understand. It's your life. I want you to be happy. It's not about you making me happy. And so there's a competitive element to all these things, and like even COVID taught you that you can work. A lot of people can work in different cities and be quite productive. And we have big technology centers around the world, including Buenos Aires, because they've got a great university on coding and engineering in Argentina. And so Miami and Florida compete. They compete with taxes, they compete with universities, they compete with, we have more employees in Texas today than we have in New York. If you go to Texas, you want to build something, you build it. The taxes per personal and individual lower. They've got their universities make sure they're graduating the students you want. And if you need to change a bus route because you have 5,000 employees somewhere, they just change the route. You go to other cities, you'll be negotiating for 20 years. And I think they're making a mistake. And a lot of those cities do things in the name of good, which create bad. All of these bad policies, in my view, usually hurt the lower paid people more. That's what happens. And they also don't acknowledge their problems. So I think like in inner cities, we do a lot of work in inner cities in the United States, in the schools. But the first thing is, raise your hand and say we aren't graduating kids with the skills they need to have a well-paying job. So I give you skills, 16 weeks, advanced manufacturing or taking care of a car, taking care of a Cessna, coding, compliance, something like that, $60,000 a year job at 17 with full medical. We're not doing it. We're just simply not doing it. And then, and I'm not going to blame any particular group here, but if you don't stand forward and say, we have a problem, this isn't working, you won't fix it. So there's a lot to do. And, like going back to Miami, Florida's done a great job. And if you look at what's happening, South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, Georgia are growing. California, Texas has just started a new stock exchange. I don't know if it's going to work, but it's going to probably be bad for ISS and Glass Lewis And I think that's great. I think those institutions are terrible and should be crushed, and so the domicile of corporations, the litigation system we have to deal with. We better start fixing these things, because if we don't, folks, in 30 years, we're going the way of Europe. And, and we have to open our eyes and make sure we're quite clear. And if we do it right, it'll help all of our citizens, all of them, not just, the people who you think are well off.
Jamie, you have a very famous quote that says, if you're not confused, you don't know what's going on. I love that. Yeah. So that confuses me. What are you confused about most right this second?
I'm always trying to, sometimes people think these CEOs are totally on top of stuff. Just so you don't know, half the time I feel like I'm riding a Bronco and hanging on for dear life. And all the things you talk about, what does this mean and what does that mean? Well, I worry about all those things, and they do get quite confusing. But I heard Eric said, we iterate over and over. We don't try to get the answer in the first time. We meet, we'll do it again, we'll do it again, we'll do it again. And sometimes, so I tell people, in most even very complex issues, the answer is waiting to be found. It's waiting to be found if you get the right people working it over and over, looking at it from multiple different angles, or at least by the time you make that decision, you've minimized the chance of making a terrible mistake.
So I have 20-year-old kids, their first year, freshmen in college. And one of the things that my wife and I struggle with is, what advice do we give young folks today about their professional careers, given the fact that there's so much volatility in such a quickly changing landscape? The advice that I received from my parents is completely different than the advice that we should be providing kids today. What would you say?
I learned, first of all, the world is faster and it's more complex. It doesn't change my advice that much, but learn. It's a lifelong thing. You learn by already talking about people and reading always. And it's always changing. Whatever profession you're in, it's changing again. You should be reading, thinking, talking, traveling, et cetera. Develop your EQ. Your EQ ultimately is probably more important for your happiness. It's probably more important for management skills. We're just part of a team. I love Ted Lasso. The Ted Lasso is, and Eric's part of it. The team, the coach is trying to get both the individuals and the team to function properly, get the best out of everybody. Sometimes it dictates discipline. Teach the kids discipline. I'm quite disciplined. I do my homework, I do my exercise, I do my reading, I do all my pre-reads. I'm always focused in a meeting. But develop your EQ. And your EQ is empathy, communication, follow-up. Are you earning people's trust and respect? There are a lot of people who aren't trusted and respected because they're BSers, and everyone else knows. And so they have to be flexible all the time. Have good